Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel Tour update. And as we're set to deliberate the latest developments here in Israel and throughout the region, it's always important to remember that today we mark day 587 since October 7th of 2023, when Hamas committed its atrocities, of course. And while we mark that day, we also need to note that as we speak, U.S. President Donald Trump is currently visiting the United Arab Emirates for the third leg of his three-leg trip. And we will discuss that and more. But first, let's introduce our experts for today. Major General in Reserve Dr. Yaakov Amidror, who formerly served as Israel's national security advisor, currently the vice president of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, and a distinguished fellow at the JINSA Strategic Center. Next to him is retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmett, formerly a U.S. Secretary of State for Political and Military Affairs. And last but not least, Brigadier General in Reserve Dr. Amnon Sofrin, formerly the Chief of Intelligence at the Mossad Intelligence Agency, as well as a senior officer at the IDF Intelligence Directorate. And General Amidror, I'd like to start with you when we're talking about President Trump's trip thus far to the Gulf. From your observation, is it good what is happening there from an Israeli perspective?
I think that will be judged not by but what will be said by President Trump, but what will be achieved in negotiations with Iran and relating to Gaza. Two negotiations that the Americans are in the processing, and when we will know exactly what was achieved in both those negotiations, it will be clear if it is good for Israel or bad for Israel. A good agreement with the Iranians in which they don't have the ability to continue to enrich and to have nuclear military capability, and is very good for Israel. Not good for Israel, it's very good for Israel. And negotiations in which the Gaza will be ended at the end, disarming Hamas, exiling its leadership, will be a good agreement for Israel, and Israel will be more than happy to have it. So I think that everything will be judged by the results of the negotiations that the Americans are now conducting. We understand that the Americans can get from the Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, and Qatar, few trillions of money promising by those Arab countries to buy in America. Israel is not in this league. And we have to see what the Americans, what the Americans are getting. We have to see what the Americans are giving, and then it will be clear for us if it was a good trip from the point of Israel point of view, or it was a bad trip from the Israel point of view.
Thank you, General Amidror. General Kimmett, from an American perspective, naturally, the president dictates ultimately what is the foreign policy, but looking at the dramatic decisions put forward by President Trump this time around, I do suspect that there are concerned voices within both Central Command as well as specifically the various institutions in Washington with regard to a couple of those developments and somewhat the over deepening of America's interests in the region.
Well, I think you can look at this as glass half empty or glass half full. Look, I think if you pull back, it's important to understand that, to use an overused term, the speech that President Trump gave in Riyadh was an inflection point in American foreign policy. He discarded the old neoliberalism of the past, the old neoconservatism of the past, and he said, in so many words, America is adopting a policy of neo-pragmatism, very much like the Chinese. It's not about pushing values. It's not about trying to remake the world in our image. This is all about cash, and it's all about transaction. But on the specific issue of the Israeli-United States relationships, I think there are two or three areas that the glass is more than half full. Obviously, President Trump said he refuses to allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Number two, he's continuing the large amount of security assistance to the region. And number three, he's pushing very, very hard on the Abraham Accords. All three of those, although not directly stated in the presence of the Arab princes and rulers, are beneficial to Israel. So the code word was better relations with Israel, get a bomb out of the hands of the Iranians, continue to provide weapons and support to our allies. That's all good for Israel.
Thank you, General Kimmett. General Soflin, your take on this, and specifically also when we're looking on the statements made by President Trump vis-a-vis the Islamic Republic of Iran. He noted we are very close to reaching some type of deal at a time when all that we hear about and see are Iranian reactions of resentment and rejection. So it seems to be a little bit unclear of whether or not those far-reaching gaps that were known to be as broad as they are ultimately going to be resolved by either Iran succumbing to American demands or America succumbing to Iranian demands in this case.
I think that we all understand that there is a gap between what is being discussed in the closed room and what is being published outside. And each one is publishing for his own benefit and not the real truth. You don't really know what happens between those two delegations when they sit together and discuss these issues. Everybody comes out and says that was very successful discussions. Now, that is open to understanding of each one of us differently. Now, as I understand the picture is that they're going to get to some agreement. My opinion is that they will allow the Iranians to keep at certain level, the lowest level of enrichment for what we call civilian use or civilian purposes, and not for military use, to give back all the materials that are being highly enriched. That means 60% and above. And that means that Iran will probably preserve most of its facilities and will be able to, under monitoring, of course, and under inspection, to be able to control what we call the civilian use, meaning all the facilities. And when the time comes and the decision will be accepted, they will be able to turn on the point and turn on the wheel and go back to enrichment and to what we call military use. But this is for the long run. For the short time or for the coming months or coming year, they'll probably settle with that and will get the benefits of lifting up the sanctions or part of the sanctions and getting more boost to the economy. And of course, this one is a win-win situation on both sides. And everybody will be pleased, except from Israel, of course.
I mean, what's the difference between accepting enrichment on Iranian soil to the JCPOA? General Amidrol, since the lowest levels that are referred to are ultimately the 3.67% that were identified during or preserved during the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, President Trump withdrew from that. He made a couple of statements now saying that he won't accept enrichment on Iranian soil. But if that is the case, that it will ultimately occur, can Trump afford a JCPOA 2.0, as the former National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan referred to it?
I think that here Trump will have to make a decision relating to his commitments in the past and what can be achieved now. And the problem from his point of view that he is adapting the same agreement that he retreated from. So I don't know how he will conciliate, how he will justify such a backlash in his nice words. It's a question that you have to apply to the president. I don't know how we will find a way to justify such an agreement, which is not in a millimeter better than the one that he retreated from a few years ago. In a way, yes, he's bringing, if that is the agreement, we don't know yet. If what Amnon described is the agreement, is going back to Obama agreement with the new name, Trump agreement.
General Kimmett?
Well, again, we've already made a fact out of hypotheses, which is that the United States will, in fact, pull back from its position or negotiate away its position of no enrichment on Iranian territory. That may or may not be the case. I think there are two other factors that will make this not JCPOA 2.0. Number one, if we can get an agreement out of the Iranians to move all of their currently enriched uranium to a third country and under supervision, that's completely different from what happened in the JCPOA. Second, if there's a more intrusive inspection and verification structure put into place, regime put into place, that will be extremely helpful and different from 2.0 as well. The corollary to the second is that any violations of that or attempts to interfere with that would have to have a series of snapback sanctions that are much easier to put into place than the UN currently has. So if in fact the hypothesis is correct that we will allow in the agreement for the Iranians to maintain civil nuclear enrichment program on their soil, there's still ways to make this somewhat different, not dramatically different, but somewhat different than JCPOA 1.
Well, the commitment by President Trump is to ensure that Iran never attains nuclear weapon capabilities. And my question here, Dr. Amnon, when we're talking about such a deal, in my understanding, unless the Iranians alter their tone from technically not credible answers to 4 open probes on nuclear particles that were uncovered in undeclared nuclear facilities in breach of Tehran's non-proliferation treaty, such a deal, irrespective of the various technicalities thereof, would be rendered as purely political and would grant the Iranians to have a certain loophole where they would continue to address its various aspirations under or within closed doors, so to speak.
That's right. That I said before that this will allow Iran to keep on maintaining the knowledge and the technique needed for what we call advancing in the nuclear program. Nevertheless, of course, they will cooperate. You know, what we call for the outside crowd, they will cooperate. They will say that we apply to any of your demands. Of course, we are negotiating. So negotiation, in the end, you come to some agreement, some equation that is acceptable on both sides. Each one gives a little bit space to the other one. And therefore, this agreement is kind of compromise, and it's a compromise. It's not what we call fully one hand or one-sided. It's a compromise between those two wills, and they will maintain what they will, and they will play it very cool and like they did before. Just remember that in 2005 they signed such an agreement with the European countries, and they just asked for some centrifuge to be left for R&D. This R&D became 10,000 centrifuge within a few years. That means that they know how to manipulate and they know how to play the game. They know how to fake that we are cooperating, we are willing to cooperate, we are willing to do anything you ask, according to what we agreed. But when the time goes by and you fell asleep a little bit, we will go on.
General Amidrol, can Israel abide by an agreement that puts it at threat?
I don't want to speak about an agreement that I don't know the details. As the general said, we don't know. if the description of Amnon is the description of the coming agreement, it's a very bad agreement and not better from the one that Obama achieved years ago. Of course, now they export all the enriched uranium, which they didn't have under Obama, but the agreement is the same. It's allowed the Iranians to keep the facilities that they have, and when they find the right time, they can use the facilities to enrich uranium to the military grade. This is the essence of the bad agreement with Obama, and that if that is the agreement with this administration, that I don't know if this agreement is almost the same. It's identical. So I don't want to say anything about an agreement that I don't know the details. Here, the details are more important than the very nice words about achieving an agreement and so on and so forth. It's not about the ceremony, it's about the details. And of course, we don't know the details. I don't know what to say. What I say is something in principle. From the Israeli point of view, it doesn't matter if the agreement was signed by this administration or another administration. If it is a bid agreement, Israel should react and do whatever is needed to prevent the Iranian from having the ability to purchase the capability to have a military nuclear system. And it doesn't matter for us if it is this president to sign it or another president to sign it. From our point of view, what's important is that the Iranians will not have nuclear military capability. And the fact that you call the agreement with nice words doesn't make the agreement a better one.
Well, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian came out and stated that he will not allow a scenario in which enrichment is not the continued inherent right of the Iranian people, as he put it, something, of course, that is something that we need to take into account. Hopefully, the United States does achieve a good agreement, irrespective of what the United States does. The E3, namely Germany, Britain, and France, have announced that, or not announced, they have indicated that they plan on triggering the snapback mechanism in the event that they deem any type of political solution or diplomatic solution as not in Europe's interests. I think that is not the best rhetoric in context of today's reality, but nonetheless, that's what was deliberated amongst the Europeans. Now, I will point out, General Kimmett, that a friend of ours and a long-time panelist here on Israel at War and TV7 at Large, Colonel Joel Rayburn, is about to start his hearing at the Senate's Foreign Affairs Relations Committee for his confirmation as the Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs, namely the number one guy for the Middle East from the State Department, and we wish him all the best, of course, from here in Jerusalem and Washington at that. And within that context, I mean, his previous position was Special Envoy for Syria. He was one of the founding fathers, so to speak, of the Caesar Act, which brought about very heavy sanctions on the Assad regime at the time. It seems like those sanctions are about to evaporate.
Well, that's true. And clearly what President Trump is trying to do is not be last to the table when the issue of Syria comes up. Very much taking the Chinese approach. We don't care what happens inside of Syria. The internal affairs of Syria are of no matter to us. We just want to be able to work with you. We want to be able to prosper with you. And how you treat your citizens, how you treat your women, how you treat your culture, that's up to you. That's not our business anymore. That's that neo-pragmatism that I was referring to earlier.
I understand the neo-pragmatism angle. However, from America's perspective, naturally, it does not want to see friction between its NATO ally, namely Turkey, and the State of Israel, which is a strategic ally on different levels as well. And therefore, Syria will serve as a type of buffer zone.
Well, it will also serve as a test case of this new philosophy of neo-pragmatism. What do you do when that neo-pragmatism runs up against two allies, Turkey and Israel, at some measure of conflict, hopefully low, over Syria?
Absolutely. General Sofrin, since 2015, when the Deputy IDF Chief of General Staff, Yair Golan at the time, traveled to Moscow to deliberate the different deconfliction mechanism, I assume, and maybe General Amidrol can correct me if I'm wrong, that the 80 kilometers was discussed back then to ensure that the Iranians do not entrench within that buffer. Today, of course, Israel has already set a red line when we're talking about strategic forces, heavy forces south of Damascus. Is that something that will be maintained within the current context?
I'm sure that this will be the position of the Israeli government. The Israeli government will insist that no armed presence will be south of Damascus and to the border of Israel, and of course with the Jordanian border that's bordering Israel on the southern side of the Golan Heights, on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights. And that means that when we are speaking about armored units, you refer probably to the Turkish army. The Turks are considering and they're applying pressure on President Al-Julani to be able to get access to some what we call military garrisons inside Syria and to deploy their units. But I believe that Israel will insist, and there are negotiations between Israel and their delegations, to try to set up a new mechanism just like they did with the Russians. And that means that Israel will insist that no armed presence will be deployed south of Damascus. And that means that the Golan Heights on the Israeli side will be safe and with no threat or no real threat of armed units that can be able to attack or carry out some activity against Israel.
General Amidrol, your take on that?
As the one who visited Moscow ahead of Yair Golan visit, at the beginning of our operations in Syria, to make sure that the Russians understand our red lines and the logic of our operations before we had a red line to prevent any mistake in both sides. I can tell that if you are clear enough and the other side is not looking for having friction on the ground, both sides can find solutions that will pave the way for both of them to implement their interest. And again, if both of them are not looking to have such a friction, if one of them is more than want to be in that situation, it cannot be prevented. So at the end, it will be tested on the ground, but the decision will be taken in advance by the decision makers in both sides. If they want to find the compromise, as we found with the Russians, it will work. If they, and in this case the Turks, because it's not the interest of Israel, of course, to have any friction with Turkey, I think that the compromise can be found. And as someone said, there are more than rumors that we have a dialogue with both the Syrians and the Turks, and in a way, it's more the interest of the Syrians than the interest of the Turks. That Israel will not be hostile to the new regime and let the new regime to rebuild Syria. Again, here the test is in the pudding itself. Let's see what regime we will see in the future, how it will behave. We have an interest to defend the Jews minority. We don't want that this minority will be butchered by the regime. We don't want to see the Alawite faced in their place. We understand why the revenge is so important for this regime versus the Alawites. But we try to prevent such a slaughter of the Jews in the south. And how we find common language with both Syria and Turkey, it's a very delicate and interesting question. We are working on that, and we will. I hope that we will succeed. And in this case, I think that the good relations between Syria, New Syria, and United States of America is a very positive sign for Israel. Because if this regime understands that it needs America for the future rebuilding of Syria, it's good for Israel.
I would never have dreamt in my whole life that to state that Al Qaeda would turn to America for the purpose of rebuilding a country would even be in the calculus. But this is all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank General Kimmett, General Sofrin, and General Ami Bedror for all of your valuable insights. And I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem. Shalom. The Middle East, home to the cradle of civilization, retains a reputation from time immemorial as one of the most complex, conflict-ridden regions of the world. A cluster of nations, religions, powers, and influences, Mideast intricacies pose conundrums to even the most astute individuals. Bombarded daily, indeed every minute, by a barrage of information, some accurate, yet most of it less so, TV7 Israel invites you to watch and hear some of the most knowledgeable experts, most of whom partook in creating policies shaping this region today. Join us for Jerusalem Studio every Tuesdays and Fridays for content that truly matters. For more of TV7's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com.